Tune in as we listen to Paul Barron talk about how he has partnered with a firm in China to bring this product to the US. Hello, dreamers. Welcome to the Late Starters Club, giving you the inspiration, mindset, and tools you need to start something midlife and beyond. Remember, it's never too late to follow your dreams. Late Starters, it's your host, Andrea Vall, and I am here joined by Paul Barron, the inventor of the wall printer. And I'm super excited to dive into this today because we've had a lot of entrepreneurs on this show, a lot of people who've started businesses, but not that many inventors. And so that's what's fun about diving into today's topic. And so welcome, Paul.
Thank you very much, Andrea. Pleasure to be here with you and your audience.
Yeah, yeah. So you invented the wall printer at
Let me correct you. Let me just correct you, just for the benefit of your audience and the conversation. While I am a co-inventor on several patents for the machine, the technology itself that's at the root of the vertical and floor printing machines that we manufacture and distribute to put people in business today was invented in Southeast Asia, the core technology. Then I improved upon it and became a co-inventor, which is actually credit to not only the manufacturer, but also to my company that we are co-inventors on certain patent applications where I saw a need for improvements in the product and the technology. Technically, the technology did originate prior to my joining the company,
Yeah.
but recognized it as something that was innovative, something that was really literally unknown and unheard of in the United States, Canada, all of North and South America, actually. It was confined to Southeast Asia, a little bit in Europe when I discovered it. And then I brought it to market as a machine that would help
Yeah.
people make money or improve their lives by putting artwork onto walls or floors.
Mhm.
That's the background.
Yeah, yeah, good. And that's always important because I understand in patents and things like that, you want to make sure that you're not taking credit where it's not where it deserves to be mentioned that it was a co-invention or technology was there. But I love what it does. So tell our audience a little bit about what it does so we can get that. And
Yeah. I generally, Andrew, don't make these conversations a pitch for my current company.
yeah.
I'm 72 years old, which I guess fits into your late starter category. I started this company at the age of 68. It's one of a journey of 20 or more companies that I've either founded, created, worked for, retired several times. It wasn't a trajectory like a traditional hockey stick that people dream about, where everything goes from 0 to 100
Mhm.
without any pitfalls or anything else. I don't know anybody's journey that goes like that, even though they may state so. Everything has its learning experiences. I call those valleys and drops. And then you have your successes and your high points. You hope that the
Mhm.
high points outweigh the learning experiences, as I call
Mhm.
those. But in any case, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, I was introduced to a technology by a company that's actually now a competitor of mine that I had never seen or heard about before. It was a machine that basically took any digital art and printed it, not painted, but printed it with inks onto any wall, any vertical surface. It didn't have to be a smooth wall. It could be brick or stucco or slight recesses like a garage door, or it could be on concrete, on wood, vinyl, plastic, glass, metal, tile, anything, any wall, as
Mhm.
long as it's vertical. You could take a digital image and print it. And it didn't matter how
Mhm.
wide it was, how high it was. There were ways of
Mhm.
machine that could go without limitations of height or width. So it was
Mhm.
used well, anything from small text like the menu of a restaurant or somebody's name on a door to in their office to the picture of a dog. Here's my dog with Santa Claus on the wall behind
Mhm.
me, wall printing on paper. Because my wife doesn't like when I print on the walls in the house. So you can print. And the one above me is a wall printing on canvas, which is a bunch of my friends that we get together every now and then. And I gave that to
Mhm.
them as Christmas presents last year on
Mhm.
canvas, that wall print also. But it was an interesting machine that I'd never seen or heard about before. And while the company that approached me to market it, because that's my background, is marketing innovative products and finding their high value audiences in the United
Mhm.
States. And that's what I made a career out of, taking a baby bottle manufactured in Austria, a self-service dog wash system from Australia, software that is for audio and video and navigation system technology from Russia and from Israel, and a headband headphone from China. This is what I've done for my career is take a product that's innovative, that has either a need or a need to grow or a need to be introduced to the American audience. And I was basically the American face on these companies' products.
Mhm.
I helped them either find their customers, reach some level of success,
Mhm.
exit, or partnerships, find their strategic relationships, manufacturers, whatever. But I retired several times, as I mentioned, over the years. And at those times, I got restless very quickly. And I'm always looking for something else. Again, in my 40s, 50s, 60s, and now 70s. Generally, when I say to my wife, Maureen, come take a look at this, and I'm in my home office where I am right now, rather than come and look at what I'm talking about, generally she cuts up my credit cards and then changes all the passwords on our bank accounts. Here we go. Paul's going to invest or get into something crazy again. This time she was all in when she saw this machine. However, the company that approached me, they wanted me, like many of my prior engagements, they wanted me to be a kind of a hired gun, a commissioned salesperson for them.
Mhm.
And years ago, I stopped doing that. If I liked something, I was going to invest in it. I was going to own it. I was going to have some control and equity
Mhm.
because I invariably found out that some of the products lacked something or can be improved in some way. And unless you have ownership and control, it's very hard to do that with somebody else who takes ownership of their products and is so in love with it that they don't want to hear something else and somebody else's
Mhm.
opinion or ideas. They're happy with the way it is. And they just wanted me to sell it. But I got tired of doing that. So anyway, so I stopped the conversation with this company that approached me. And even though it was a cool product, but I got off the conversations I had with them with the feeling that this was something really cool. How come I've never seen or heard about it before? Which is the first thing I have to ask myself before I get involved in something. And so I did my homework. Same homework I hope my customers do today. Who's doing this? Can I make money with it? What is it for? What do you do with it? What am I going to do with it? What do I need to do something with it? And all those questions that have to be asked. It turns out that there's only a handful, literally 5 companies in the world that manufacture this type of technology. None of them were in the Western Hemisphere. There was a German company, 2 Chinese companies, an Australian and an Indian company. And they all lacked something that I thought was really interesting about the technology, except for one Chinese company that was actually the originator of the technology. And it also had some things that were lacking, but some things that were made it much more interesting to me than the other products. And without getting into the technical aspects, just suffice to say that I was really attracted to the product. I saw its potential. And this company was in what's the right word? They were in a mood or they were receptive to me joining them and investing in it and helping them launch the product in North and South America, which markets that they or nobody else were in at the time. And
Mhm.
so we had our courtship for about a year, and eventually we agreed on the relationship and how it would be structured and the investment I would make in it. And we began our path together. And in,
Mhm.
let's see, November of 2019 is when I first received my first shipment of machinery from them, which required some changes, improvements, and things, converting it from Chinese to English and French Canadian and Spanish and Portuguese, all the markets I was going to serve. So I had to do all that. Now, I wasn't the smartest kid on the block, Andrea, when I created this company in November of 2019. And then in January of 2020, less than really a month after I received all these initial machinery components, the world stopped with COVID,
Yeah.
as well we
Yeah.
know.
So that definitely would have been a challenge. That would have been a huge issue with launching things. Just to recap and make sure I understand like how things worked. They already had the technology and you just came up with some improvements on it, but then we're also marketing it. So that's an interesting thought as well for people who maybe are thinking of they've got some possible idea. Maybe it's a good thing to see is anything else out there if there is something else out there that's similar, maybe it's an opportunity to market it or to just add to it and then partner instead of having to come up with the whole entire idea yourself and figure out how to get it manufactured, et cetera, et cetera.
So, Andrea, that's not only great observation
Mhm.
and questions buried in there, but it's also exactly what I went through and the challenges when, as I left off saying, I started this company really when COVID came around. And here
Right.
we were at a time, and I'll mention two things in to the point of what you just brought up. I created this company, like I've done many things in my career, with in mind, what is somebody else going to do with it? What is somebody, just like I would maybe make improvements on it or find a niche, whether it be the customers, whether it be vendors, strategic partnerships, customers, business owners, whatever the place was for the service, product, software, technology, whatever it was that I found interesting enough to represent or grow, it had to have an audience. And who wants it? What are they going to do with it? And so while COVID came around in January of 2020, basically shutting the world down, people were being laid off, people were working remotely. They still are
Mhm.
today,
Mhm.
3, 4 years later. And so uh, while that was a challenge to many companies out there and actually brought many companies down as a result of that, I looked at that as an opportunity because what I wanted out of this product was to create business opportunities for others, whether they be a startup like myself who's looking for something to invest in or to take on themselves to create a revenue stream and a
Mhm.
business for themselves, for their family, for their communities. It's all about what will it do for that customer. And that customer
Mhm.
falls into generally two buckets. The person who is out of work or laid off or retired even, because many of our audience, just like the audience you look to when you asked me, invited me to be here to talk with you
Mhm.
late in life, when I was in my 60s, I started this company. Half of our customers, maybe not half, but about 25 to 35% of our customers today. And we have now in 3 years, 135 customers. And a customer to me is an entity that I created a business for, or they
Mhm.
created a business using the technology I provide and
Mhm.
supply, train and support. And so out of those 135 customers, I'd say a good 25 to 30 of them, 20 to 30% are people who were retired, who
Mhm.
just are also like I was looking for something because they're restless. And even though they may be on in life, they're not finished yet. And so
Mhm.
they're looking for things. And that might be out of circumstance because they did get laid off from a job, or they're looking for a career change, or
Mhm.
they're retired and they're just restless. And so if they fall into any of those buckets, they were an ideal customer for us because this was something new and innovative. It does require something of a risk-taking personality to take on something brand new. It's not buying into a coffee shop or a plumbing business or becoming a lawyer or an accountant or buying a hamburger place, coffee shop. These are things that you can see, that you understand what they are because
Mhm.
they're all around us. Here was something, a machine that prints images on
Mhm.
walls. How do I get images and pictures on walls? I can buy a framed picture. I can throw up a vinyl sticker on a wall. I can wallpaper a wall. I could paint a
Mhm.
wall. An artist and a muralist. These are the ways you can do it. Very limited numbers of ways to do things,
Yep.
and they all their limitations, whether time,
Yep.
cost, surface. That's what I loved about this technology. And so yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, it's awesome technology. I think that's the cool thing, and I think so one of the questions I wanna get into a little bit with how did you decide what or, like, how did you approach the financial part of starting this business? Obviously, you had to invest a lot into it. And so how did you make that decision and make that leap into saying, "Hey, at 68, I'm going to make a big investment, maybe take a risk." What was it for you that let you say, "You know what? I think that this is gonna work." Did you do some analysis on the risk that you were taking with starting the company?
Well, nothing should be entered into without some analysis, whether it's looking into yourself and deciding, are you prepared to take a risk, make a change, go this path, whether it be through education, through career choices, through your family's necessities, whatever decisions you make that are going to dictate whether you own a business, work for a business,
Mhm.
or do nothing, has to have some type of foundation of analysis of where you are in your life and what are your hopes and dreams for the future. I always say that the ingredients to any business decision should be routed in three basic things. I call them time, talent, and treasure. You have to have the time to devote to do that analysis, the market research, find out, is this really a solution to a problem out there? Or are you really enamored by something and you're going to look for a problem to solve that doesn't really exist? It has to be a
Mm-hmm.
real problem, a real market. So it
Mm-hmm.
requires the time it takes to discover that and to come up
Mm-hmm.
with that conclusion. It requires that you have a certain amount of talent to be able to do this. Or people always ask me, what makes a good CEO or a good leader of a company? I'm not going to
Mm-hmm.
sit here with you and your audience and profess to be that person, but it's a question that I'm often asked and that I often ask myself. And my answer over the years I've learned is this. What makes a great leader or a great CEO of a company or the great owner of a company is somebody who's smart enough to understand the job that needs to be done, but is wise enough to back off and let the better qualified people do it. You can hire people to do things that you don't have the talent to do, but you also have to be wise enough to back off and let them do it and to reach the goals that you're looking for, whether they be financial, customers, markets, what have you. R&D, anything requires that kind of combination of talent, which some people may possess all those hats and wear those hats. I learned early on in my life, the hats I liked to wear were sales and marketing, relationships,
Mm-hmm.
identifying, building relationships with people and companies and vendors. That's what really got me up in the morning and got me out of bed, is looking forward to who am I going to meet? There's the old saying, be nice to the people on the way up. They're the same people you're going to see on the way down. Nothing could be further from the truth. The relationships you make in your life, whether it's from grade school, college, work, career choices that you've made, the people that are in your life, whether they were a resource to you or whether they were a co-worker, like confidant, a mentor, these are the relationships that are going to define your life generally of who you are as a person and who you become and how you succeed and how you identify those things you're willing to take a risk on. And then treasure. Okay. That's the time, talent, and the last one, treasure. Yes, you need capital. Most businesses do, even if the business itself that you're thinking about or desiring, even if it's a job change, you need the capital to feed your family, to get to work, to have an automobile or have the ability to take a bus or a subway or a train or a plane and do the things that you need to do to be able to feel good about yourself and the company you work for and the job at hand that you're either building or working with. So that requires some type of capital. And certainly if you're going to take a risk on something, you have to have that mental, um, what's the right word? The mental fortitude, the mental aptitude, the tolerance to take
Mm-hmm.
that risk. That's something I've been, I'd say, blessed with in a combination with the relationships I've made. At those times in my life that I may not have had the confidence that I can do what I wanted to do, other people would tell me, yes, you can, or no, you shouldn't. And because I listened to many people who I trust and value, I was able to go on different paths. And when I wanted to take a risk, sometimes I had the confidence that I would do it. Did that mean it succeeded? No. I've had failures, or I like to call them learning experiences. But there were those times that the intention did not work out the way that I had anticipated. But I was always willing to take a risk. And I always had the confidence in myself that I could pick myself up and start again. Again,
Mm-hmm.
trite phrases notwithstanding, it's not how many times you fall down, it's how many you get up. I was always ready to get up. And I was also ready not to look back. I learned from what happened earlier, whether successful or
Mm-hmm.
not. But I never looked back and regretted anything. If I sold something, if I left something, if I started something, I didn't look back and play the what if game. I think all
Mm-hmm.
of these are also important to define the path you're going to take, the risk you're willing to take, and how successful you're going to be, or keeping your options open to knowing
Mm-hmm.
when to pivot.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. That is a tough thing to recognize. And so you've had a lot of businesses over the years. How have you decided when it's time to exit versus when it's time to push through? Is there anything you do to really make that decision if you are supposed to lean in harder and push harder, or time to close up shop and move to the next thing?
It's a great question, Andrea. And it's something that, of course, everybody who is going to pivot from whether it be a job or a business, buying a car, selling a car, I don't care what it is that you're doing. You have to make that decision. Is now the right time? Why am I doing this? What's going to happen next? Is it going to be beneficial? Is it going to be taking 2 steps back to take 5 steps forward? So those are all the questions that do have to be asked. Me personally, I always learned from everything I did. Again, not meaning that it was successful all the time, but I always learned from it. Early on in my
Mm.
life, somebody told me something which stuck with me to this day, which is why I do the things I do. And I'm willing to take it upon myself and take the risks myself. I worked for a company at a very early age when I was in my 20s. I was making more money than I thought I would make at that time. I was working in a sales office operations position for a manufacturing and distribution company. And it was a great job, worked with great people. I found out that after my first year there, again, I was in my 20s, and being my 20s means that 50 years ago. And so I got $1,000 bonus check at Christmas, the first Christmas I worked there. I was as happy as could be. I was making a good salary besides, but getting this $1,000 bonus at Christmas time, I felt very appreciative and very proud. The company recognized the accomplishment I had done for it in my role. And so my mother happened to be the bookkeeper of this company, which is
Mm.
one of the reasons I got the particular job. But again, without getting into the background that nobody cares about, my mother said to me, that was really nice of them to give you that check, Paul, and that bonus, but based on the work that you did this year, all the owners of the company each wrote themselves a check for $25,000 because she had that inside information. And so I said, okay, I just put that in the back of my head. But then Monday, when I went into the office, I went to the owner and I said, I really thank you so much for that bonus check. I really appreciate it. Enjoy working here. I said, now we're at the first of the year. I think that I'm due for a raise. And so he said to me something which I'll share with you and your audience, and it stuck with me throughout my entire life when I had to hire people or when I worked for other people. He said to me, he said, Paul, you've done a great job. Appreciate what you've done. And we felt really good about being able to give you that bonus, and you definitely deserve it. He said, but I'm going to tell you this, Paul, whenever you work for somebody, you will never make as much as you think you're worth. But when you work for yourself, and you take the risks, that's when whatever you get will be what you are worth. But working for me, I'll make sure you're paid more than anybody else will pay you. But unless you work for yourself in your own company and take your risks, you'll never earn what you think you're worth. And
Mm.
I thought about it. I took it to heart. And about 2 minutes later, I quit. And so that's my long-winded way of answering your question. That was my point. I took to heart what he said. I digested it fairly quickly and impulsively, like I usually do. And I
Mhm.
quit that job. And I ended up working for a competitor of his who actually had offered me a job months earlier. But I was loyal to the gentleman who hired me, and I'd never thought of that before. But the job that I was offered was one that allowed me to do the sales and marketing that I wanted to do, but none of the factory work and administration of personnel and hiring and firing, all the things that I really did not like doing.
Mm.
And so I quit and I went to work for
Mm.
this other company. I ended up working half the time, 2 weeks out of the month, just doing selling.
Mm.
And the other 2 weeks of the month, I didn't work at all, actually. And I'm
Mhm.
still in my 20s, and I was making twice the money I made in the first job because I
Mhm.
started my own little sales and consulting company. And for this gentleman. And that was my springboard towards really starting my own businesses thereafter.
Yeah, yeah, that is very true that it is definitely there's just so much more upside, so much more potential because with a salary, you've got the ceiling there, and you have to either change positions or change into bigger companies if you're working for yourself. It's a lot more potential, which is exciting
You
and scary.
take risk, you take the loss, but you also benefit from the success. And
Exactly.
should not occur. But I didn't fully answer your question because my subsequent 40 years or so were influenced many times at that pivot point by relationships. As I mentioned,
Mhm.
that was at the core of pretty much everything I've done my whole life, whether
Mhm.
social, business. And so in one area usually led to forming a relationship or a partnership in a business. And a lot of people say you don't mix friendship and business, you don't mix family, money, or friends and money.
Mhm.
I live the exact opposite of that.
Mm.
I'm not going to say that the people who loaned me or invested in me always did so without the stress that accompanies that and the hopes, of course, that it would
Mhm.
pay off for them and for me when
Mhm.
there was a personal relationship there. But taking that leap and engaging with somebody as a partner influenced a lot of those pivot points that I had after that instance of the sales and marketing job I just described. I ended up making and saving a lot of money. And I had a friend who was in the restaurant business, and he worked for somebody, but he wanted to open his own restaurant. We were friends because we played tennis together. And he said, Paul, what do you think about me opening a restaurant? I said, I think you're very capable of it. He says, what about you going in partners with me? I could use some of the investment and I can use some of the behind the scenes kind of input outside of the food and beverage end of the business. And I think you'd be great at that. I said, I don't know. And we took a year, literally one full year, me and him, who were really rooted in a relationship of playing tennis with one another, but we're good friends. But we didn't know that we could work together. And so we spent a year. It was probably one of the best years of my life. Again, I was still in my 20s, late 20s at the time. We played tennis every morning. We went out for lunch in the afternoon. We played tennis every afternoon. And we went out to a different dinner restaurant every night. And we did that for a full year. And we did that for purposes. Number one, can we get along outside of playing tennis? Are we on the same wavelength with our ideas of what this business should be? So should we be in business together? And then what will that business look like? How are we going to form it? Who's going to do what? And all that kind of stuff. At the end of the year, we decided, yes, we agreed on almost everything that we had talked about and what we both wanted to accomplish. And we entered into that restaurant in 1979. I'm very proud to say that restaurant that I founded and created in 1979 with then my best friend is still open today, 44 years later. Not many businesses, or certainly not many restaurants can say that. I got out of it 12 years because another pivot point came around in my life, and my partner was the restaurant guy. So I sold to him after 12 years in 1991, but that restaurant is still open and thriving today with the same menu. And so
that is awesome. That is so cool. That's great to have like things that you've created and started that have some longevity. Paul, this has been awesome. Thank you so much for all of your thoughts on entrepreneurship and starting things up and being a late starter yourself. I always love to close out the interview with, I'm such a quote junkie. I love hearing motivational quotes or inspirational sayings that other people have. So would you like to share one of those with our audience here?
yeah, I'm more than happy to. I get that question every once in a while. It's a great question. And it's tied into what I've really talked about with you, Andrea, about the relationships. My favorite quote is actually the title of a book that's entitled, All I Really Need to Know I Learned in Kindergarten. It's a small book, but basically it tells you everything. There are people who are going to talk about business quotes and other kinds of quotes, historical figures, political figures, whatever. All I really need to know I learned in kindergarten. That's the quote in the title of the book. It basically says, be nice to others, take a nap every day, drink milk, have cookies, do unto others as others would do unto you. That's the core of it. And that to me is worth living your life that way.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Very true. Paul, thanks again for joining us. And we'll have all the links to your wall printer and where people can find that and connect with you and things like that in our show notes. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Andrea.
Hope that was helpful, and make sure you grab the free guide, Top Tools for Late Starters, on the website at latestartersclub.com. And let's turn dreaming into doing.